Just marking the markets now, and we flattened out at 14,700 for the Sensex. We're holding out in the green by about 60 points. Asian Paints is flaring up, and how on the Nifty 100, it's at 2807, up nearly 10% in trade. It's been strong volume growth, but let's talk about the impact of the lockdown, the inflationary pressures, as well as the outlook for their home decor business. Joining in on the show is Mr. Amit Syngle. He's the Managing Director and CEO. Good to have you on board. To begin with, while we did see that 48% volume growth come in on a 1% base, it still is fairly impressive. But how did you do in Q4 versus what we witnessed last quarter? And what did you see in terms of your outlook on demand? To what extent did the new home decor business contribute to it in Q4?
Thanks for getting me onto the channel. It's a pleasure speaking to you. Two things which I would like to upfront say in terms of how we see the differences between Q3 and Q4. Q3 was also very good. We had upwards of 20% volume growth in the quarter. And what we saw was that Q4 further accelerated on that in terms of a lot of new demand which came in. And what we found was that not only the retail business, but the projects business, which was a little bit down in Q2 and Q3, really picked up in a big way in terms of, big corporates, institutions, everyone coming up, builders, cooperative societies coming up for their painting and maintenance and so on and so forth. So to that extent, that's one strong thing. The second big thing which we saw was that we saw a difference with respect to, the market structures in terms of metros T1 and T2 really contributing in a very big way in Q4 as compared to Q3. And I think that was very clear that in Q2, Q3, these cities have been slightly depressed because of the larger number of cases and the paranoia in the market. And therefore, what we saw was a big transition in terms of they contributing to the overall growth in a big manner. The third area which came in very strongly was with the metros T1 and T2 coming in. We saw a big change in the product mix with respect to a lot of luxury and premium products kind of taking off and doing quite well to that extent. And these three areas have really propelled the overall growth. I would say that, there is a little bit of a pent-up demand, but largely a lot of new demand came in. And even if you were to kind of discount for that 2 weeks of March, which was a lockdown, I would say very, very strong volume growths in the months of January and February, which are indicative of the basic growth in the quarter in terms of what we've been able to kind of do. So that's on how we see the difference between Q4 and Q3. As far as the home decor business is concerned, what we see is that the business has done quite well. We have now close to about 18 stores across the country where we are dealing and offering home decor under one roof. And these are big stores, upwards of 6,000 square feet, which are there. And we have got amazing response from the market in terms of able to offer the consumer everything under one roof, that also with technology, which is the visualization and beautiful execution in terms of what has taken place. So both the stores business as well as the beautiful home service, which is the at-home home decor service, have taken off quite well. And we are quite pleased with, our foray there.
So what has been the impact so far of the second wave of the pandemic with the kind of localized lockdowns that we've seen through April as well as May? Did demand completely dry up? And in Q1 FY21, during the first wave, you did manage to post more than a 35% degrowth. So are you expecting that kind of an impact this time around as well?
So when we see, yes, the effect started in the last week of March, but overall what we see is that I think April has gone off still quite well. We've been able to manage, across the country, given the large amount of presence across the country. And there have been disturbances in terms of local lockdowns and various timings and various markets closing and so on and so forth, and also affecting some of our back-end processes in terms of the whole value chain and the supply chain kind of coming into a little bit of a, issue. But I think April has been largely good in terms of what we have been able to see. Yes, some disruptions and more disruptions in the last week of April, I would say, to that extent. But by and large, okay. I think May is looking a little tough as of now because of the fact that now practically across the country, it's literally like a lockdown to that extent. And therefore, while all our plants are open in terms of what we are able to kind of really produce there and so on and so forth, but we find very, very few markets where we are able to service at the moment. So we are really hoping that possibly, we have hit the peak in terms of the, COVID cases, at least across the larger cities to that extent. And we feel that, possibly it is a matter of time when vaccinations catch up and we would kind of get into some normalcy as we kind of look at, times ahead.
Sure. Mr. Syngle, with what lag do crude and other prices also impact your COP? And what was the rise in cost that you witnessed between Q3 and Q4? How comfortable are operating margins looking, and what's the outlook going ahead?
So overall, if you look at the story of, gross margins, that definitely, I think the gross margins have been a lower to a little bit as we compared with both Q3 and the last year Q4 of financial year 1920. This has been largely due to the high inflationary pressures which we saw building up from the last week of December of 2020. And, material inflation has been to the tune of about at least 7 to 8% in terms of what we have seen, both with respect to crude derivatives and looking at critical raw materials like titanium dioxide and monomers, which go into the paints to that extent. But I would say that we've really worked very strongly with respect to our sourcing efficiencies and looking at formulation efficiencies, looking at controlling our overheads and cost in a very strong manner, which has really marginalized the impact in terms of the whole area of the Q4. And as we see it, we didn't want to kind of take any increases in terms of prices because we felt that from a point of view of demand, it would not be very good because people were still kind of under paranoia and they were still emerging from that entire shock in terms of the pandemic. And therefore, we looked at deferring the price increase, and we've actually taken a 2.8% increase as on 1st of May to that extent. So what we are pretty confident is that, as kind of, times go by, some inflationary pressures would come down. But what we will also do is that we can look at more price increases in future so that we are able to kind of really do justice to the overall margins.
Okay. How sensitive is the Indian consumer to price hikes? And this is something we've also been discussing. I mean, premium has only started to recover. Will this tend to halt any progress there?
So overall, what we see is that, that there is definitely a sensitivity to price hikes. But what we see overall in the scheme that, a rate hike of anywhere between 2 to 4% is not something which really impacts the purchasing of the customer in a very, very strong manner, because if there is a certain house which is getting painted in say 15,000 rupees, the marginal impact of that 4% in price increases might translate to an additional 400, 500 bucks in terms of which is there for the customer. So in the larger scheme of things, it won't kind of really impact in terms of an overall kind of a zone. But yes, from a point of view of projects where the price sensitivity is higher, there any increases do impact a little bit in terms of the demand elasticity. But I think what we are confident is that if we are taking a measured increase and we know that this is an increase which the consumer is able to kind of lap on, I think we should be okay with the overall paint demand to that extent.
Right. Amit, coming back to the home decor business, this is not your, first rodeo, so to speak. You have, you have SAS, you've got Sleek as well, which took a while to pick up. Tell us a little bit more about your growth plans going forward when it comes to your decor business, and how much of sales will it contribute to going forward in the financial year?
So overall, when we look at the home decor business, I think what we are doing is we are propelling our kitchen and bath business very, very strongly, because that is a business which has been there for us with some time. And we are looking at really propelling that business in a very, very strong way to that extent. And today, all our stores and all our services offer home decor, kitchen and bath in a very, very strong manner to that extent. As I said, under the larger umbrella of home decor in the store and services, we offer all the services, whether it is furnishing, furniture, lighting. To that extent, it is everything under one roof. A lot of areas we look at where we have outsourced the ranges. We have also recently done an alignment with Pure, which is a strong leader in the market in terms of furnishings. And therefore, what we are really aiming is that our entire aim is to kind of give a customer a very, very strong product range, which makes the customer happy and brings joy to his home decor in a very strong manner. And we look at that this business will be a little slow because the market is dominated a lot by the unorganized sector here to that extent. But we see that we would like to grow gradually into this business as we kind of go through our stores, through our service, through our existing home improvement business of kitchen and bath in terms of going. And as we kind of go ahead, I think we hope that this business should start contributing at least to high single digits in terms of the overall contribution of the large paints and coating business.
Sure. Amit, give me some color on what competition as well is up to and what it's like right now. What kind of expenditure on distribution, brand building, marketing is it that you've earmarked for the financial year?
See, overall, what we are integrating it is that in a very strong manner, we are integrating the whole area with paint. So a typical home store would have a large amount of paint and home decor categories to that extent, and therefore the whole area is literally kind of subsumed with respect to the overall promotions we will do for a store, which would kind of really accelerate the paint category as well in terms of going ahead. So what we see is that given the measured way in terms of what we are going and looking at really offering a very strong value to the consumer, we think it should not really place a lot of stress on the margins in terms of going ahead. But obviously, I think as we go ahead and depending on which way possibly the market goes, it would kind of tell very differently. But I think we are open in terms of saying that we have taken a certain area as a strategic area to get in, and we want to move strongly from the share of surface to the share of space within homes in a big way.
Sure. Now, while you'll be focusing on expanding the home decor business, the other big players also looking at entering now the paint segment. How do you plan to, defend market share while at the same time making all the required investments to really drive the new business forward?
So what we've been seeing in the last 2 decades that, we've always had strong players entering the paint market, and earlier we had big international multinational players entering like Sherwin-Williams and so on and so forth. We've had strong other players, Asian players entering into the Indian market as well. And we have also seen a lot of big infrastructure players who have been there. And recently, 3 years back, also we saw entry in terms of some of the large players with deep pockets and so on and so forth. So what we see is that I think the overall market is pretty big. And today, I think there is enough space for a lot of people to kind of enter and look at what they can do in the market to galvanize it. As leaders, what we are very clear is that we have always been expanding the market pie, and we have got into newer categories. We are fueling some of the demand at the bottom of the pyramid, looking at categories which like waterproofing and all, which are really expanding the whole game for all the paint players to that extent. And given the fact that the market is expanding and the overall per capita consumption of paint in India is relatively far lower than some of the Western geographies, we feel that there is one ample space for a lot of people to kind of come in. And we are not kind of really worried that in terms of our foray, that we would kind of really get affected as we kind of look at in terms of going ahead. Because today, while the entry barriers are low in the industry and anyone can come in very easily, what we think is that your supply chain and your brand equity plays a very, very strong part. And some of these areas takes years to kind of really build in. And therefore, I think from that point of view, we are pretty confident that today we don't see any real threat in terms of newer and newer players entering into the market.